All right, as we continue looking at how to manage multiple projects and deadlines and all these little details we've been talking about, I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to write these words. Write the word goals, G-O-A-L-S, and write it vertically, G-O-A-L-S. And I want to give you a word or a phrase that applies to each one of those. The letter G stands for gives direction, gives direction. High quality goals need to give us direction. Now when I say gives direction, here's what I mean. If I was going to get in my car and I'm going to drive from Cleveland, Ohio to Washington, D.C., what would be the most effective way to make sure I get there on the most direct route? Yeah, right, I'm going to map it. I'm going to get a GPS, I'm going to MapQuest it, I'm going to Google Map it, but I'm going to make sure I have some kind of direction. Why? Because otherwise I would be going in circles, or I may take the long route and not get there the most direct way. For those of you that are numbers people, statistically it is about 20% of the American workforce that actually writes out a to-do list. Now for the 20% of the people that do that, they will accomplish close to 90% of their tasks. For everyone who does not do a to-do list, they accomplish between 30 and 40% of their tasks. So huge difference. Letter G gives direction, put it in writing. Letter O. O stands for ownership. Ownership. Ownership is really the number one key to time management. Because think about it, if people don't take responsibility or ownership, nothing ever gets done. Like if any of you ever worked with, maybe you do now, you ever work with that person where you can just see them coming towards you and you're already tired? You know, or you hear their voice off in the distance and you just cringe a little and hope they're not coming for you? Yeah, well, we need to make sure we are not that person. So ownership is the big one. People have to take responsibility for their improvement, for their development, for their time management, for their effectiveness. I mean, think about it. Why did you come to this seminar today? Yeah, you want to improve. You've got some challenges. You want to grow. And you've taken ownership and you understand the value of that. Some of you, you've put yourself through college, you've educated yourself, and you know the importance of investing in your improvement and your development. You take responsibility. Ownership is key. Letter A is attainable. And when I say attainable, I mean it needs to be realistic. It has to be doable, achievable. It's got to be able to actually be done. It's got to be real. The letter L stands for long range and short range. Long range and short range, and that's all on one line. And we're going to come back to that one in a little bit later when we look at your specific objectives and how to take the big piece and break it down into small pieces. And the letter S stands for specific. High quality goals, they've got to be specific. We really need to specifically say, here's what we're after, when we want to see it happen, how it's going to play out, and we want to get very specific on what it is that we want to achieve. Okay, now, to accomplish the goals that we're after, there's one challenge that every one of us runs into, and it's usually the biggest one that I want to address first, because it's the one thing that prevents people from getting done the things they want to get done, and that's interruptions. I mean, think about it. We get interrupted in so many ways. And today, a little later, we're going to look at all the technical interruptions and the email interruptions and how to really handle those effectively. But let's talk face-to-face for just a quick moment here. What about the live interruptions every one of us seems to deal with? And when we talk interruptions today, I'd like you to separate in your mind the difference between an interruption and an opportunity. Because every interruption isn't truly an interruption. Maybe it's an opportunity to resolve a problem. Maybe it's an opportunity to move a process forward. Maybe it's an opportunity to gain a customer. So is it an interruption or is it an opportunity? And here's how I differentiate in my mind. An interruption is anything that drops you on your priority list. An opportunity will keep you where you're at or even raise you up. So is it an opportunity or an interruption? So let's talk about true interruptions, okay? And I want to split this up between those of you that have an office or a door where you can actually shut people out, and those of you that don't. Maybe you've got more of an open space, a cubicle, you're out in the field, and you can't just close everybody off. All right, so how many of you actually have an office or a door where you can open and shut a door? Okay, several people. So let's start there, all right? And as we talk about these strategies, keep these ideas in context. We're talking about interruptions for the next few minutes. So you're not going to be using all these strategies on all people at all times. But let's start with those of you that have a door. The time management rule on open door policies is that open door policy should be limited to designated times only. Designated times only. So that's like me saying I have an open door policy. My door's open every day of the week from 12 noon to 2 p.m. You slot the time it's open, it should not always be open. Now if you don't do that, let me show you what's going to happen to you 100% of the time. One of the things SkillPath does a whole lot of, is we do what is called on-site training or in-house training. And that's where we would come to an organization just like yours, and instead of it being a public seminar like this, it would all be hands-on. It's geared to you, it's tailored to you. We talk about your goals, your objectives, and we hit a home run for your team. And we do a lot of this. Well, normally when we do in-house training, one of the first people we meet with is somebody in a leadership role, because they bring you in. And after some pleasantries are exchanged, the leader will usually say something like, hey, I'm really looking forward to the training today, but I don't want to be a robot here either. We want to have a good culture, good environment, good team, so we want to be effective, but we don't want to be, isolated and cold either. And we always say, of course, we're going to bring balance into the approach, make sure that it works for everybody. And then the next comment is what really interests me, because this is what most leaders will say. They'll say something like, now, even though we want to be effective, I want to be available too. So understand now, I have an open door policy. I'm not better than anyone. We're a team around here. We work together, talk together, keep me in the loop. Let's communicate with one another. My door is always open. And every time I hear somebody say something like that, the first thing that goes through my mind, huge mistake. Huge mistake. Because think about it. If you have an open door policy at all times, what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to get the drop-ins, you're going to get the distractions, you're never really going to get a lot done. So it's important that you have designated times for an open door slot. Now let's say you say, okay, but in my job I do have an office or a door, but I can't do that. Then I would suggest you do the opposite. Have designated closed door times. At the very least, have some times where you are off limits to people, where you are not available. Maybe you can take your things and go to a remote location or another office or an empty space, but at least have some times where you are off limits to people. Because if you don't have designated open slots or designated closed slots, you're going to be really hard pressed to stop interruptions. All right, but let's say for a moment you don't have a door. You can't shut people out, it's not an option to you, you just can't do that. You've got an open space, cubicle, okay, same rules apply. You need to have, you need to create some systems. Now let me just back up a sec. How many of you are familiar with a guy named Edward Deming? Okay, just a few. You need to be. So if you get a chance, I want you to go online and look up Deming, D-E-M-I-N-G. Deming is the total quality management guy. He's just, he was one of those guys who was way ahead of his time in his thinking. Just great at time management. And Deming, he's one of the experts who was out there for many, many years, lived to be 93 years old, and you have many companies who would say they would not even exist if it hadn't been for Deming principles. And one of Deming's principles was this. Deming identified that 80% of all the problems in your workplace right now, they are a systems problem. 20% of the problems in your workplace, they are a people problem. So 80% is system, 20% is people. And I share that because one of the problems a lot of people have is they try to flip the number upside down. Somebody will say, my door's always open, for example. I have an open door policy, but people are always walking in and out, I never get anything done. I have a people problem. Well, do they have a people problem? No, they've got a system problem. Why? Because they created a policy that says drop in on me anytime you feel like it. It's a system problem. So if you don't have even a door, you've got an open environment, systems are critical to controlling interruptions. Now let me give you a couple examples what systems would look like to help you really control the interruptions. One of the systems many organizations use is called the color-coded system. And if you're not familiar with that, here's how it works. On the back of everybody's desk, chair, workspace, wherever you're at, you can post one of three colors on your space. The first color you can post is red. If red is posted, it means you are off limits, no one's allowed to interrupt you, you're off limits at that time. Now understand, red, because we don't want that to get abused, red is intended for short windows of time only. When I say short windows of time, I mean it's never more than a 30-minute window of time, and you're not allowed to use it more than one time in a day. So that stops the abuse. But don't we all have times where we just need to be focused, and you don't need people, coming at you all the time? So red is for that focus time. Like maybe it's, hey, if everybody keeps coming at me, payroll's not going to get run. So I just need a few minutes without people coming at me. But red. Second color you can post is yellow. Yellow means that if you do interrupt, it needs to be work-related, you need to be prepared, and it needs to be brief. So it's those times where, I do need to drop in, but I just need to ask you something quick. And then green is go. And green is just, hey, got a job to do, but got some free time today, not going crazy today. And if you need to stop in and we need to talk for a few, not a problem. Another system you can use, a lot of organizations do what's called the egg timer system. The egg timer system. And if you're not familiar with that, here's how it works. In everybody's desk, workspace, wherever you're at, you have one of those little 3-minute egg timers. And when you walk in and interrupt, I turn over the timer. And when the sand is out, you must leave. Why? Because in time management, you have what is called the 1 to 3 minute rule. And that says that if you can accomplish something in 1 to 3 minutes, get it off your plate forever, go ahead and do it now. The egg timer does that. In fact, it was interesting. I had a gentleman one day say to me, he goes, your egg timer idea, he goes, isn't that kind of rude? And I said, well, I think it depends on how you look at it. Seems to me when you drop in unannounced for 20 or 30 minutes and just eat up my day, that's kind of rude. And you know, I've not said this yet today, everyone, but I'd ask you just to keep this in mind when you leave today. We receive the behavior we allow. We receive the behavior we allow. So if you keep allowing it, how would it ever change? The egg timer keeps us on track. You ever get the person who interrupts you like this? Hey, you got a minute? They just drop in, hey, you got a minute? Yeah, we all have. Here's my standard response. Any one time someone says, hey, you got a minute? Here's what I'll do. No, you know, actually I've got about 5 or 6 minutes before my next commitment. What's up? Now think about why I do that. With interrupters, and keep it in context, we're talking about interrupters, you always want to put boundaries on that. Put some time limits early on. Because if you don't do that and 5 minutes in, I say to you, oh, I got to get going, well, then you think I'm rude and blowing you off. And a lot of times the person will say, well, I don't need literal 5 minutes, I need like 15, 20 minutes. And I'll say, oh, well, that's fine, why don't we schedule it? Let's plan it. Have some boundaries for yourself.